He walked with them. In the first light after the Sabbath, on the dusty road from Jerusalem to Emmaus, 2 disciples carry grief and confusion. You will see how sorrow gives way to recognition, and how Scripture and a broken loaf reveal the risen Lord. Cleopas is a man of unsettled questions. He walks slowly, the weight of recent days pressing on him. He remembers what was spoken in the temple and the shock of a cross. He is searching for meaning more than for a destination. The other disciple is younger, his heart still pulsing with stories of Jesus. He listens and remembers, but his face shows confusion. He holds on to fragments of witness and a faint, stubborn hope that something remains beyond the cross. Jesus appears as a stranger on the road. He walks without hurry and listens without interruption. Though their eyes do not yet recognize him, his presence will unfold the meaning of their grief through Scripture and the breaking of bread. As morning presses on the road, the 2 disciples leave Jerusalem still stunned. Rumors run through the city. The tomb is empty. The women spoke of angels, and some claim to have seen visions. They cannot yet reconcile the cross with these whispers. In that moment, they speak openly about all that has happened. Cleopas describes Jesus of Nazareth, his power, his hope for Israel, and how the chief priests handed him over to be crucified. Their words are raw and full of a hope that now feels shattered. As they talk, a stranger falls in and asks a simple question: "What are you discussing?" His voice is calm and curious. The question pulls them out of their inward grief and forces them to name their loss. They answer, and their confession becomes the frame for what follows. Because of that question, they tell him everything: Jesus' life of wonder, their hopes that he was the one to redeem Israel, and the betrayal, death, and burial that crushed them. They also tell him about the empty tomb and the women's testimony, half hoping and half dismissing what they heard. When they finish, the stranger gently reproves them for their slowness to believe what the prophets foretold. He calls them fools not to accept suffering as part of the promised story. He begins to interpret the Scriptures, showing that the Messiah must suffer and then enter into glory. As the road bends, the stranger opens the Scriptures to them. He reads with clarity and urgency, weaving together prophecies about suffering, the servant, and the hope of redemption. Their ears strain. Pieces they had not fit together begin to lock into place. In that hour, he explains why the Messiah had to suffer. He connects the Scriptures to the cross, showing that death was not the end but the hinge of promise. This reinterpretation is painful yet illuminating. They begin to sense that despair has not ended God's plan. When they draw near the village of Emmaus, their pace quickens. The gravity of the stranger's words presses on them. They are still wrestling with grief, but there is now a restless curiosity that will not let them remain passive. As evening falls, they invite the stranger to stay, because night is near. Hospitality is a lived custom, and the invitation is both kindness and a search for clarity. He accepts, and their modest evening will become the scene of revelation. When they sit, the stranger takes the bread, gives thanks, breaks it, and begins to bless it. In that ordinary act the long knot of grief loosens. His gesture echoes the meals they shared with Jesus. Memory and sacrament converge in a single motion. In that very instant their eyes open. The blessing and the broken bread trigger memory and faith. They recognize him, Jesus. Shock, joy, and a strange peace flood them. The reality of resurrection overwhelms rumor and transforms sorrow into praise. As they grasp who he is, he slips from their sight. The sudden absence is not abandonment but confirmation. The risen Lord cannot be possessed. Their amazement is tempered by a burning urgency. They must tell what has happened. As they leave, their hearts burn within them. The phrase is sudden and literal, a spiritual warmth, a conviction that their sorrow has been rewritten. They replay the scripture and the meal and understand that the story of Israel has turned toward new life. Without delay they rise and return to Jerusalem. Their feet move faster than thought. They must tell the others, Peter and the apostles, what has happened. Testimony is now the priority, because witness gives the resurrection a communal truth. When they arrive, they find the 11 and others assembled, discussing the empty tomb and the women's report. The disciples tell their story. Doubt, wonder, and fear mix. Their witness adds another strand to the testimony that the risen Christ is known through Scripture and the breaking of bread. Back in the room, they interpret what has happened. Resurrection is not a private miracle, but the fulfillment of God's redemptive story. It confirms that Jesus, rejected and killed, is now vindicated, and that suffering was woven into the path of salvation foretold by the prophets. The passage teaches that the risen Lord reveals himself through Scripture and shared bread, turning grief into conviction and sight. Recognition is not merely visual, but rooted in memory and meaning. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel and tap the bell so you do not miss the next one.